G'day guys, this is Jackson Milan, the Wealth Mentor, and I'm here for another expert masterclass with Scott from Go Global Bookkeeping. Now, Scott is introduced to me by some really good friends of mine, Cody Thompson and a couple of other individuals, Dale Beaumont being another. So Scott's become highly recommended, and I've seen him around the traps. I've been following his journey for a while, and I've finally pinned him down to have a bit of a conversation around his business, his experience, and share some value with you guys, given that it's really important that we understand our numbers in our kind of post-corona world. So Scott, mate, thanks for making the time. How you doing?
Great to be here. Thanks, Jackson. Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Matt. It's, working from home is something I do anyway, so not a big adjustment for me.
I love that, mate. Fantastic. So, Scott, give us a little bit of background. Who are you? What do you do? What's your experience been?
Sure. Born in 1967. No, so I'm a chartered accountant. I've been running my own accounting firm for 16 years, although I just sold out of that 2 years ago. Morphed that, or started a side project business called Go Global Bookkeeping, which was all to do with offshore, using the offshore accountants and for our own accounting firm, and then offering that service to other people as well, and then morphed that into a bookkeeping and staff leasing business focusing on accounting. So it's all about accountants, numbers, and that's where my whole career's been. It's been good.
All the fun stuff, mate.
Yeah.
So where did you see the opportunity to get into bookkeeping?
Really, because accountants and bookkeepers don't get along, and accountants don't necessarily like bookkeeping. It's kind of like something that happens well before they get to them. But what we recognised was the opportunity to be able to do bookkeeping through our offshore accountants, because we had a very good systems and processes and relationships that we'd built up from our own accounting service. And we thought, well, these guys can do bookkeeping, where we'll start them there. And what we very quickly found was that they were very, very good at the bookkeeping, at least matching what we were getting in Australia. And it was also something that clients really, really liked their accountant to provide. So that's how we started with our accounting firm, and then morphed out to everyone else.
Fantastic, mate. Great. So how long's Go Global been going now?
August 2016 we started, so coming up to 4 years, I guess. 3.5 years. It had a very small role when it was initially started, because I was focusing on our accounting business. Now I'm full-time. I've been full-time on Go Global for about 18 months, and it's grown significantly in that period of time.
Fantastic, mate. So let's do a little bit of a backtrack and let's talk about the typical business prior to you starting Go Global. So most of us work with SMEs, and I guess SMEs suffer from a series of pain points when it comes to their finances. So looking back to prior to starting Go Global, what was the state of most businesses when it came to their bookkeeping?
Variable so those larger businesses that had full-time internal accounting teams were generally pretty good. Not great, but pretty good. It would certainly be left for us and to tidy the things up around about the BAS time, and also certainly in year end there was a lot of work to do to make sure that their accounts are correct. The smaller clients, often those that are doing their own books, or their spouse, usually the wife, but sometimes the husband as well, would be doing their own books around the kitchen. You sort of think about them, I'm sure they didn't, but around a kitchen table at night doing the bills and entering all the invoices. That was typically done pretty badly. So that would require a lot of time to rework just to do the annual account side of things. So there wasn't a lot of value in the numbers those days. And I think we also need to talk, that's if it was pre-cloud accounting days, then that added another layer of complexity onto it, because the accountant really struggled to add any value to those accounts because they weren't in charge of the actual bookkeeping system themselves.
And I think this whole idea of like a virtual bookkeeper has fundamentally changed since cloud accounting came about. And it's been a godsend for so many small businesses, because the businesses that I speak to, they see bookkeeping as a commodity. It's just something that goes on in the back end. And from face value, people don't see a whole lot of value in it, let's be fair.
Yep.
But it's when you really understand it, and with your expertise as being an accountant, understanding the importance of having the numbers right, that's when it really unlocks itself, right?
Well, I think, and I'd put that back to you too, Jackson. A lot of small businesses, the vast majority that I've come across, don't understand profit first. They don't understand cash flow management, and therefore they don't understand the value that their numbers can give them. They get that the sales side of things, they sort of can understand that. When it comes to gross margin or trying to work out the overheads and what they're going to do with the cash in the end, then they struggle. So absolutely, I think cloud accounting has been good. From a commoditization perspective, though, that's very true, and we've also that's been pushed by the software companies to a large degree as well. So something that we as bookkeepers represent to Xero all the time when they go out there with their advertising and say, look, our system pretty much does it all for you. You don't really need a bookkeeper. And that's true. You know, I don't know if everyone knows that you can actually lodge your own tax returns as well. You don't actually need an accountant to do your tax returns. But it's not recommended to do it that way.
No, definitely not.
If that's your skill set, then by all means do it. If your skill set is anything other than accounting or bookkeeping, you know, why would you?
And look, mate, I've always been a big believer of you stick to what you know, you outsource everything else. And we've for a very long time, we kind of begrudgingly used a bookkeeper, but then the penny finally dropped. When business starts to grow, you start to create a team, you really need to understand your numbers. That's where a good bookkeeper really shows their value. So, Scott, let's talk about what a good bookkeeper actually does.
Yeah, so I guess the concept of bookkeeping, because it's kind of this generic term, people just say, oh, bookkeeping. They don't really quite understand what it is. So the first thing that bookkeeper will do is make sure that all of the transactions that are going through your bank account have been accounted for correctly in your financial statements. And those financial statements or the dashboard are the things that they're the gauges, the dials that you use to run your business. You can see what's going on. So bookkeepers will firstly make sure that all the transactions are in there so that your gauges are as accurate as they possibly can be. Then they'll do other things. So they'll facilitate payments. So they'll make sure that your suppliers have been set up correctly, that your payments are nice and streamlined and efficient, so that you don't have to waste a lot of time. A lot of business owners will know that's a particular pain point when it comes to paying people, trying to make sure that all their details are correct. So that's what a bookkeeper will do also. Payroll, making sure that payroll, especially with in this COVID world, with all of the different allowances that have come up, really highlighting the importance of what the bookkeepers can do for you as a business to make sure that you're set up correctly to receive those payments, but making sure that your employees are going to get paid correctly. That's a very essential function. And then clearly of equal importance is making sure that any invoicing that happens from the accounts receivable side, so from your sales, that's accurately represented so that you know who owes you money, how much money you're actually owed, how old it is, you know, who's the squeaky wheels that need to be, or who's those sort of customers or clients that need to be followed up because you'd rather have cash in your bank account than theirs. So that's the basic things that a bookkeeper would be responsible for doing. You might extend that on to making sure that some of the more traditional accounting roles, which is the making sure that your balance sheet, so the financial statement that represents the stuff that the business has and the money that the business owes, and then what the business owner's portion is of all of that, that all the numbers there are accurate. Because, you know, when it goes to buying stuff for your business that you use, like a motor vehicle or a machine or a bit of equipment, then there's a bunch of accounting entries that us accountants like to do to make sure that these gauges that you use to run your business are as accurate as possible.
Fantastic. So there's a lot involved, and I think that it's often overlooked of how much actually goes into being a good bookkeeper. So I guess that comes to, a common misconception, or maybe a fear that most people might have around deciding whether they should use Barbara, the local bookkeeper that comes in once a week or once a month, or potentially utilising an offshore service like yours, Scott. So what are the common objections that you hear, and how do you overcome them?
Yeah, and some of these objections are changing over time, which is interesting, certainly from cloud accounting time of things. But often some initial objections that we would hear is that, well, we need someone to come in our office because we've got an in-tray full of invoices that need to be entered into our system, and there's no way that we could, you know, get those invoices to you any other way. Now we've got things like Receipt Bank or Hub Docs and there's Expensify. There's a bunch of tools and applications. Most suppliers now offer digitized invoices to you. Very, very easy to get that information to someone who's not there. In fact, so much so that Barbara herself probably won't come into your office on a weekly basis anymore, because Barbara's business model has now changed so that she can take on more clients. So she probably does things, the vast majority of things, virtually herself. So sometimes people find it easier to communicate with people if they're face-to-face. Again, in a COVID-19 post-lockdown world, we're all becoming very used to communicating with people, from a distance perspective. The other thing, Jackson, the elephant in the room is kind of, well, these are Filipino people. They're not, we're based in the Philippines, but there's others that are based in India and other places. And so often people will say, oh, do they speak English? How do we, how will we communicate? Will they, are numbers the same? Is their accounting system the same? Generally, we train our guys to make sure they're across the Australian regulations, but accounting is a universal language. So numbers are numbers no matter where they are in the world. It's not like any particular country's got a different spin on them. And at least in the Philippines and India as well, most people speak English. I don't know if you've seen how multicultural we are in Australia, which is a great help to us as well, overcoming that objection, because our accounting firm had people from India, people from Russia, people from Philippines. So it doesn't matter whether they're local or offshore, I think, now.
Fantastic. And look, I think this is definitely changing. And I think, look, although coronavirus presented a lot of different challenges, I think that a lot of those preconceived notions of what can and can't be done have been proven right or wrong. So I think now it's a good time to reconsider these options. So in terms of the value that we can be getting in terms of having a good quality bookkeeping service in our post-coronavirus world, what are some things that we can be doing to get more value from our bookkeepers or our financial partners to help us navigate the time, Scott?
Great question. I think the first thing is, as a business owner, I would take some effort and energy into understanding what it is that you're trying to achieve with the books and records of your business. So it's not good enough in this world, in this, whether certainly, in terms of Warren Buffett's sort of parlance, the tide is well and truly out right now. So now we're fighting for survival. We're making sure that, our businesses can survive the next 3 or 4 months or however long that this is going to go for. So having some idea of what your financial statements are actually telling you is very, very important to be able to communicate effectively with your then bookkeeper, financial advisors, accountants, whoever it is that's going to help you. Understanding the value that they add, and I guess that's the question, what value do they add? Well, certainly the bookkeeper can help make sure that everything is right. As I said, the gauges and dials are correct. They can also help do things like update cash flow forecasts, make sure that the reports that you're relying on either weekly, sometimes daily basis, are always up to date. The information that you need to run your business is there. And that's what your bookkeeper can help you with as well.
Fantastic.
So I'd say a little bit of understanding about what it is the financial statements are trying to tell you and what you're trying to achieve with those, I think is vital.
100%. Look, I think the common problem that I see, we facilitate a lot of virtual CFO services for our clients. And the roadblock that we hit up against is, well, your accounts haven't been reconciled, so we can't actually provide you with the reports and the insights. So in this current world, Scott, how frequently should small businesses be having their data reconciled and up to date, would you say?
Depends on the level of complexity, the number of transactions. That's a standard accounting things that we say, but it really does. So if you're running a business that's doing 1 or 2 invoices a week and you've got maybe 1 or 2 transactions going through your bank account, I don't think daily bookkeeping is that vital for you. I think weekly, a minimum of weekly, because you will want to make sure that those gauges are right. You will want to be looking at those on a daily basis to track your progress. So I think a minimum of weekly. Best case scenario, you're doing them every day. So you're making sure that you're always up to date, at least, or maximum have 24 hours behind. So that's a very accurate gauge that you can use to steer your business ship, if you like.
And look, and in my experience, there's been very few small businesses that are actually doing that, particularly if they're doing it themselves, right?
Well, that's right. Certainly if they're doing them themselves, because that's the biggest cost of all, which is time, and everyone has the same amount of time no matter how wealthy or well behaved you are. Everyone only gets 24 hours. So time is your greatest commodity that you can possibly have. The other thing is, to get that level of bookkeeping can cost quite a lot. So, and again, that's why the offshore model works very well, because it's around about half the cost of local bookkeepers, which means that you can afford to get more bookkeeping done, or more frequent bookkeeping done, which means that your gauges are up to date, so you can get better value from it.
Which is super important. And I think it's one of those things that in these times you can only influence what you can track and measure, right? And if you're flying blind, it's very, very difficult to make the right decisions to be able to do what you need to do when these tides have turned, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Especially in this environment, where we go, I don't want to tie this to COVID too much, but
Sure.
we are in this situation where the government are very much coming up with some great ideas and leaving that to other people to implement. So the tax office will come out and say you need to have something done by next week, which is very difficult to do if you're not up to date, and if you're sitting there going, well, geez, I haven't reconciled, or I haven't done all my accounting work from January, then it's really hard to take advantage of everything that's being offered to you right now.
100%. So let's talk about potentially a business who might be looking to get some additional support from someone like yourself, Scott. What's typically involved? Let's say you've already got a bookkeeper, or you're doing your own bookkeeping of hiring someone like yourself or Go Global. What's the process?
So after, I generally have a chat with everyone to make sure that we're going to be a good fit, and make sure there's no assumptions that they're making that will, we want to make sure that we get expectations right. We have a great, if anything, I want to undersell it, because all our clients love what we do for them, and which is really exciting. But maybe I should sell harder on that. But so once we've done that, we've determined that we're a good fit, and they've signed on to our services. We arranged for an onboarding video call with one of our bookkeeping managers who'll be in the Philippines, and they'll just have this sort of Zoom call, go through your accounts, have a look at what your expectations might be. They'll give you suggestions on the way that the processes should work. And from there, we'll commence the onboarding process, which will be just basically, we'll get access to your systems that we need to do. Every business is slightly different, so it's bespoke to each of our clients that come on board. And then we're up and running, and the clients can start enjoying the fruits of that labour straight away. It's a very simple process. It sounds complex, but it's not.
Fantastic. Well, I think most people think it's scarier than what it actually is. It's pretty straightforward these days, right?
Absolutely.
So what about the types of businesses that you work with, Scott? So typically, when should a business be considering taking on an outsourced bookkeeper? And I guess up to what level would it be that they should consider going from outsourced to insourced, would you say?
Yeah, good question. And I think the smallest packages that we have is designed for the sole entrepreneur type of person that would be starting to generate some business. So instead, it's not a hobby at this point, it's an actual business. It's supporting them. It's got transactions that are coming through. It's got a number of clients. And I'm not just talking about, you're a consultant, you work for a business and you have one invoice every month. I'm talking about, if you've got a couple every week, then that's the sort of level that you're starting to think that a bookkeeper would be able to give you a lot of value. Those sort of businesses, then, we take it from generally, once you're in the next level up is around about 5 employees, then 15 to 20 employees. And then sort of once you get beyond 25 employees, I think that's the time that you start to consider having a full-time resource, because there's a large amount of work that needs to get done every day. And you can do that either from having someone on the ground, someone that works within your business as a financial controller. If you don't think you're quite big enough for that, then you can get a full-time person off us as well, that will come in and do that sort of work for you.
Beautiful. Right.
It's okay. An affordable option at that point.
Fantastic. Great. And Scott, I guess the other, sorry mate, you go.
Can I just add one addendum to that?
Please.
I think the actual jumping off point between when you have a bookkeeping service and then when you get someone else in is when you've got enough financial knowledge or intelligence to understand exactly what it is that you need from the accounts and exactly what you want done. Now, it doesn't mean the person who's coming in is not going to have a whole bunch of suggestions and ideas, but you've really got to manage that person. So as a bookkeeper, we provide a result, which is, we'll give you the reports, we'll make sure they're right, we'll do all of that sort of stuff. When you're when you're employing someone directly or through us as a full-time leasing person, then you're responsible for giving them their day-to-day tasks. So you have to have that sort of financial literacy and understanding of your own business at that point as well.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I guess it's at that point where you're probably at more of a medium-sized organization and might have a CFO or that kind of thing, right?
At least a virtual CFO.
I get you.
Cool. Or
Okay,
a
mate.
good relationship with their accountant.
Makes sense. So I think that was the next point, that you mentioned that sometimes bookkeepers and accountants don't play well together. So for a small business who's trying to manage that relationship between an outsourced provider like Go Global and their accountant, how does that typically work, Scott?
It's not really as much as an issue as it used to be. So the reason that we butted heads with accountants and bookkeepers butted heads often was around things like the transferring of data files, which we don't have with cloud-based accounting systems like Xero or QuickBooks or Mild any longer, which is great news. It also was the way that points system was awarded from Xero. They've changed all of that, so there's no discrepancy between whether it's a bookkeeper or an accountant any longer. So and bookkeepers are quite good at doing what bookkeepers do and leaving the complex stuff to accountants. And if you can get that relationship right, then it makes the accountant's life a lot easier, which is good in turn, very, very good news for their clients, because they can add more value to their clients if they're not worried about chasing up little discrepancies that the bookkeepers caused. From our perspective, we've always loved working with accountants. Our model is based around only employing accountants to work as bookkeepers. So we're always, and the reason I've done that is because I believe in, accountants may see the big picture a little bit better than bookkeepers who have got that very narrow focused on just looking at the grass rather than the whole trees or the wood. So I think accountants have a bigger, broader view of what we're trying to achieve than straight bookkeepers often will do. So that's probably what Go Global do particularly well, is have that relationship with their accountants. And again, if we can save the accountants time, that translates to adding better value to their clients. Everyone wins.
Fantastic, mate. It sounds like a great process, which is awesome. So Scott, in terms of if somebody's watched this video and they want to reach out for a chat, what's the next step that they might want to take to have a conversation with you?
Yeah, great. We love to have a chat to anyone. There's certainly no obligation to do that. And you can book directly on my calendar link if you go to our website, which is www.goglobalbookkeeping.com. On there, you'll see plenty of spots where you can just hit the button and then fill out your name and email address and phone number and book an appointment on my calendar straight away. So recommend that you do that. Even if it's just to chat about, you're not sure whether, bookkeeping's right for you, you're not sure whether, you're into this offshoring thing and why that's a particular advantage, or even if you just want to chat about the COVID-19 packages that the government has in place and what needs to happen there. I'm very open to talking. I'd talk to people all day if I could, because it's serving the small business, medium-sized business community is my passion.
I love that, mate. And that's so important in this particular time that we're in at the moment. And it's about trying to get people through these tough times. And I know that you offer a really essential service that helps businesses navigate the times. So you've also got some other great resources as well, Scott. So you recently wrote a book.
Yeah, I did. It's called Unfunk Your Business Finances, and it's meant to be a guide for the typical small, medium-sized business owner that sits listening to their accountant with a bit of glazed eyes, not really quite understanding what it is the accountant's trying to talk about. So it covers the basics of how to read financial statements. And I think really, really importantly, how to have a better relationship with your accountant. Because if you can unleash that power, unharness that power that the accountant actually can give you, then rather than just giving you your tax returns and your BAS statements, that you've got someone on your side that wants you to do really well, then that's a great way to leverage that as well. So if they want to get a copy of the book, again, you can find that on the website, or if they want to just drop me a line, I can certainly send them a copy of the ebook. The other book, it will be printed and post the other side of COVID somewhere.
Fantastic, mate. Beautiful. Well, mate, it's been great catching up and sharing some of your value. I think it gives people an insider insight of some options where they could potentially save some costs when costs are really important right now, and also increase the value that they're getting from understanding their numbers. So, Scott, mate, I really appreciate you making the time. Guys, if you've watched this and you've enjoyed our conversation, you want to reach out to Scott, I'll include all the details below in the description. Please feel free to reach out to him. He's super generous with his time and always good to chat to. Scott, thanks again, mate. Look forward to catching up soon.
Thanks, Jackson. Love to be here.
Take care.